what does happen to the FDA if we go through sequestration, if the budgets get cut?
Well, we are
all hope it doesn't happen.
Hoping it will not happen, but the implications would be huge. We would be taking a very significant cut in our budget. That cut would translate into things that matter to the American people in terms of times for drug reviews, our ability to do food safety inspections, and other important aspects of our work.
Is there? Yes.
Hi, Nina Shelson from Interwest Partners. We heard a lot today about data and the urgent call for more data at the point of care. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how the agency is thinking and shaping policy around decision support software or medical apps that would be either in physician or the patient's consumer hands.
Well, I think the world is transforming in terms of IT and what it can contribute to healthcare. It does create new challenges we're talking about as products emerge that don't fit our old ways of thinking and some of our old ways of doing business, and certainly medical apps and software products are very different than some of the kinds of devices that we've been dealing with in the past. And I think it's one of the areas where we feel we can be most effective as a regulator by actually working closely both with the developers of some of this new kind of approaches, and also those who are using them to better understand some of the issues and challenges and the opportunities in terms of involvement. There's no question that some of these apps need some regulatory oversight because they are being used to make important decisions about medical interventions or medical decisions. On the other hand, one can only begin to imagine how quickly certain types of regulatory oversight would be unnecessarily burdensome for the tasks at hand. So I think we need to take a risk-based approach. We have to recognize, that this is an emerging area, and we're going to have to be iterative in terms of how we think about regulation and implement it. And in some ways, I feel like it's a brave new world, and some of the kinds of devices, really are very, very challenging. But there's going to only be more of them.
Let's take the next one up here, Kathy.
Peggy, we've talked a lot today about how the AIDS group was pretty capable of working with the FDA and creating some new approaches in terms of regulatory strategy. When you see all the companies and then all the disparate cancer groups coming to FDA, and yet we're all looking for more innovation, how do we find accelerated approval, how do we look at subtypes, how do we do innovative trial design? Do you see a better way for us to work with you and create a little more innovation more rapidly?
Well, I sort of professionally grew up during the AIDS era, and my early work was on AIDS research and policy. And I was profoundly impacted by seeing what ultimately was a very positive role of the patient community in shaping how work got done and helping to push to important innovations, particularly on the regulatory side. And today I see patient groups and also disease philanthropy actually having a very positive impact in many ways. There's always the danger of sort of trying to cut up the pie into too many slices and everybody sort of pushing their own disease, and I think that ultimately is unhelpful. But what I've seen is that there's been a really, a lot of positive energy with groups working together and thinking together about what are some of the new models that could be put in place. How can we think in new ways, whether it's innovative clinical trial design, the new legislation around breakthrough products, whether it's helping to support efforts to rapidly enroll patients into clinical studies, or even helping to support some important R&D to help get a good idea further along in the development pipeline so that it can really truly become a product. So I think I see a lot that's been positive and constructive, and frankly, it's been very rewarding to me to see that it's the patient group that have really helped us push our agenda around regulatory science, because I think patients, as much as anyone, understand that this is a gap in how we do science in this country, how we invest in science, and that it's the critical link between, you know, really taking good ideas and discoveries and opportunities in science today and getting them into real world products for people.
Yes, I'm David Kroll. I'm a pharmacologist at North Carolina's Museum of Natural Sciences and a contributor to Forbes.com. My question is something I tell my students, and that is that FDA can only do what Congress legislates them to do. So for example, dietary supplements, you folks don't require safety and efficacy studies because of the SHEA. Can you name one thing that you would love to have the authority to do at FDA that currently laws don't exist for?
Well, you know, I think one of the challenges is that the world has been evolving and changing, and yet we have legislation that reflects a different era. And we've made some progress. Food Safety Modernization Act and this more recent FDASI Act in the medical product area. We need new legislation in compounding. But I think we also need to find a way, and maybe it's just completely unrealistic, where we can have more flexibility built into the system so that every time there's a crisis and a recognition of a need to do more, or every time there's an issue before us as an agency, we don't have to go through the whole process of seeking new legislation. In some areas there is more built-in flexibility, but in other areas we are locked in by the regulatory framework. And I think, you know, circling back to something I said earlier, I mean, right now it is a challenge that we're seeing products that cut across legal regulatory domains, and how can we find a way to sort of ease that tension in how we do our business. So there's not one thing. I mean, one thing I'll tell you is that everybody in the world thinks that we have mandatory recall authority for drugs, and we don't. I wouldn't mind having that.
No longer having to negotiate to remove a drug from the market. All right, well, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming and talking to all of us.
Thank you.